even many scientists believe the universe acts as one big brain when logic is the law that drives the universe. There is evidence that thought changes reality, but how does it really work, and what are the laws that allow it? When the universe evolved, evolution was expressed in the complexity of patterns in which physical laws were integrated together to create a structure composed of them as a whole. As the universe continued to evolve, the turning point was the development of consciousness in it. Consciousness is not fundamentally different from any physical law and is itself composed of complex patterns that create a structure, which in turn creates more complex structures. At this point in the universe's evolution, what really happened was more than the evolution of a complex structure like atoms or compounds. What happened was that a structure with the ability to recognize itself, a self-awareness of consciousness, was created. It was a turning point because, at that moment, the universe itself developed an awareness of the patterns that make it up, and in fact, when the first brain evolved, the universe itself became conscious. The universe was able to observe itself and thus teach about its own laws because it was aware of the entities within it. Thus, the consciousness of every being that exists in the universe is actually part of the mind of the universe. We are, in other words, the mind of the universe. But the most important part is, what are these patterns that make up the universe? These patterns are the fundamental force unifying all the forces of the universe and are defined as frequencies, waves, and patterns. This force expresses the gravitational force, which in turn creates the rest of the nuclear and galactic forces. The main thing is that everyone, at their base, is a kind of disturbance in space, and this disturbance is the force we define as gravity. This force has shaped the universe into the complex structures we see today. The human mind, or any other entity for that matter, maintains within itself the law of gravity and creates its own patterns of gravity in space. Every animal has a unique frequency or pattern that creates its own consciousness, but everyone has the same common denominator, the field that makes up the frequency. In this field, there is a link between all the frequencies. Think of it more as coding in space fields, where each code integrates with a different code and together creates a frequency or pattern. Gravity is an expression of the field of space itself, and this field is composed of forces combined with infinite energy, which are photons. This field exists as a kind of plus and minus that balance each other when they are equal. In our universe, there was an imbalance between these forces, and they caused the creation of the first patterns in the universe that eventually evolved into the complexity of the universe visible today. Every substance in the universe has an expression in this field in the form of patterns, and it continues to exist in the spacetime that consists of that field. In this spacetime, there is a mirror image of the universe, and this image continues to exist even after the material in our space undergoes a transformation. Thus, our consciousness continues to exist even after it ceases to exist in the body. When the first minds in the universe were formed, they created gravitational patterns, but these patterns had little logic since mostly self-awareness was expressed. As the universe evolved, these gravitational patterns, which were the first minds, evolved more, as did logic. At this point, the universe actually developed not only self-awareness but also recognized the ability to build itself, since thought creates gravitational patterns, and they are the ones who created the first structures in the universe, and the universe's ability to recognize it combined with logic allows even more complex gravitational structures to develop. It is important to understand that the entire universe is made up of gravitational patterns built over an unknown period of time. The brain is no different from these patterns. It simply sustains them through the neurons and electrons moving in it, which then radiate these patterns into spacetime. The difference between a planetary body that exists due to gravity and a brain that sustains gravitational patterns is the complexity that is developed. The first structures in the universe were simply a relatively basic combination of a gravitational pattern, and the brain is the last stage in the evolution of the universe that creates the most complex patterns in the universe. Imagine it this way: the universe evolved into a very basic pattern. This pattern evolved into basic structures, these structures integrated into more complex structures, and so on, to the point that the patterns that all started actually became so complex that they developed self-awareness in the form of self-conscious beings. Some may ask, what is the thought that changes reality? My answer to that is logic. As logic evolved, the universe realized the difference between a constructive pattern and a destructive pattern. This evolution of the universe continues to evolve as long as logic evolves. Thus, when a certain logic has evolved, a contradictory thought can never change reality as long as it has not refuted the existing logic. Therefore, superficial thought without logical establishment is not enough to change reality. This thought must be logical or refute existing logic or new thought, and therefore logic has not evolved for it. In general, a destructive action will never be logical in terms of a universe based on constructive actions that sustain its development. Once we understand that the consciousness of a living being and the consciousness of the universe is a reflection of each other, we understand that the evolution of one is the evolution of the other. Thus, when the first consciousness was created, it was absolute in its actions because of its limited perspective and logic. The real change is created when another perspective is added and expressed as another consciousness. It is important to emphasize that the additional consciousness is an expression of the same consciousness, since all consciousnesses are one single consciousness that expresses itself through different perspectives. Thus, this additional conscious perspective allowed the first consciousness to ask itself questions and be less absolute about conclusions from observing the world, and this is a result of another perspective on observing the universe. Some will ask how we, as individuals, are expressed within the consciousness of the universe or after death. One can think of a single consciousness as a memory, like the memories that exist in our brain. When these memories have the potential to combine and create a conclusion, insight, enlightenment, and every imaginable feeling, a combination of memories allows us to create complex actions, and by further combination as a result of these complex actions, a conscious development is created. I believe that if there is universe consciousness, then the physical matter may no longer be needed to create the patterns in the energy field of the universe that created them in the first place, since awareness of these patterns will allow universe consciousness to create new patterns independent of matter. So yes, it is possible that the next stage, the evolution of the universe, is a stage of universal consciousness that exists through the most basic forces in the universe, energy fields, that communicate with each other independent of the matter that has created the first complex patterns in this energy field. The ultimate goal of this evolution may be to further the creation of even more complex patterns that are not only non-material but also able to create new forms of consciousness. To stay up to date with our latest videos and to unravel the amazing things about our universe, make sure to subscribe to the Victory Path YouTube channel.